Have you ever wished that you could make a difference in the world, but think that just little old you can't do it on your own? That's not true. Today, we're going to be inspired by Stephanie Page, who is a millennial who is definitely making her mark in the world. Hey, my dear, I am leadership development coach Kathy Archer, and I help women enjoy impactful leadership. And you do that when you boost your confidence and you manage your composure and you lead with character. Today, we're going to talk to Stephanie about all of this. And as we do that, I'm going to pop over here and share it. You're going to hear it in a second. Don't panic.
Have you ever wished that you could change the world?
Quiet. We're going to share this into my Confident Women Leaders community. In many nonprofits, women that lead their nonprofits, the executive directors and the CEOs, feel isolated and alone, and that's not okay. In the Confident Women Leaders community, we're creating a network of women who support each other as we grow, learn, and develop together. So I really hope that you are going to join us over there. All right. So let me introduce Stephanie to you as I shut down all the devices so they're not pulling stuff away. Stephanie is the producer and the host of Seeds the Good podcast, and that's how I first met Stephanie. We've got the link to her podcast in the notes, but Stephanie is this vibrant and energetic and funny and lovely host of the Seeds the Good podcast. And she created that platform, and she's going to tell us more about it in a minute. Out of frustration of the complaints, why is nobody talking about this in regards to social justice issues? She lives in Columbus, Ohio. She's got a degree in public administration and policy, and she's the director of community outreach for Point, which is a volunteering app. And we're going to learn more about that today, too. Here's one of the kickers, though. Stephanie serves on several nonprofit committees and boards, and she was recently awarded the Columbus Young Professional Club Volunteer of the Year Award. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Kathy. I love your description of me. I really just want you to call me every morning and just tell me about how vibrant and energetic I am.
Well, I can do that.
But
we can work that out. One of the things I've said to Stephanie on when I've listened to some of her podcasts is I love her laugh. I love her energy. And it's one of the things that keeps me tuned into her podcasts. But the other thing is that she really is making a difference. Tell us about the podcast and your sort of reason for starting it and what you do on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I care a lot about social justice. I care a lot about making the world a better place. When I was a kid and people asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I would say change the world.
Why not?
Which now... Yeah, exactly. And so I've always had that mindset, and that path has changed a couple times. I used to want to be a teacher, and I studied public policy in college. I was all set to go to law school and make public education more equitable. And I just care a lot about the world and everyone in it. And recently, I like to call it Twitter activism. People have been getting more enthusiastic about sharing news and sharing stories, and the way social media is connecting us across the whole world is such a brilliant thing, and I'm so grateful to live. Exactly. Yes. I'm so grateful to live in the information age, and I'm so grateful that I am able to get all of this information about social justice and about making the world a better place. However, I feel a lot like internet activism is a lot of complaining, and not that there's not a place in the social good narrative for complaining, because there absolutely is. Nothing is going to get better if you don't acknowledge a problem. I can't live that way. My podcast, Seeds the Good, is called the Positive Podcast with Passionate People. And all of the strengths tests I've taken, the top strength has always been positivity. And I truly, Kathy, I can't
not
deal with negative news all the time. And I also feel like a lot of activism, either internet activism or actual real life activism, is bred out of guilt. And I hate that, the kind of mindset of like, why aren't you doing this? Or if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. I cannot be angry all the time. No one can be angry all the time. And that's kind of where Seize the Good came from. It was originally going to start as a positive news kind of story. Yeah. So like news around the world, news around different communities of really good things that are happening. But I kind of thought about that and I was like, I'm not a journalist. I have no business reporting news. So it kind of turned into interview style of people who are making the news.
Yeah.
So I interview founders of social enterprises, which are businesses that have a social mission, in addition to making a profit, nonprofits, social movements, social justice leaders,
Okay, let me tell you about some of my favorite podcasts. The one about the tractors, where they rent tractors. Like that one.
Oh my goodness.
That one was really cool. The one about the shoe that grows.
Yes, the shoe that grows, because international.
Yeah.
That was a good one too.
And then the third one was, and I think this one is one that you are on the board of, is the one where the women are doing the catering.
Yes. So the cards, writing the cards.
No, not the cards one, although I like that one too. But where they are, oh wait, maybe I listened to a podcast for after your podcast. But the women are they are coming from addictions and then they're learning to.
Yes, okay. Freedom a la carte.
There you
go.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't interview them, but a really good friend of mine who has a podcast called People Helping People interviewed them, and I recommended that podcast online.
Yeah.
But also an amazing episode.
Yes, absolutely. So there's lots of neat things that are happening. That's part of your world. Another part of your world is Point. Tell people what Point is.
Yeah, so Point is the easiest way to volunteer ever. A couple years ago, my boss, who's the founder of Point, decided that it was kind of ridiculous that it was easier to order food in bed at 11 p.m. than it was to do something good. Yep. So enter Point. People in Ohio can download the free app, follow causes that they care about, and sign up for volunteering opportunities by tapping Go. So I'm working on community outreach for Point, and I love my job, and I feel so grateful that my full-time job is talking about volunteering all the time.
Yeah. So you go out to organizations and say you should get on Point so that you find volunteers?
I do, yes.
Yeah. So no wonder you're connected to all these nonprofits.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I between Seize the Good and getting to talk to people all day, I am not like a founder type. I don't have creative ideas, and I don't think I would ever start a business, but I feel so lucky because I get to spend so much time talking to the people that do. A lot of founders of social enterprises with Seize the Good, and then a lot of times when I talk to nonprofits and about their volunteers, they tell me their story about why they started their nonprofit, like what led them to, or what causes they care about that their nonprofit is supporting. It's amazing.
Yeah. And so you get to hear all of these stories, and a lot of them are hard stories, like really hard stories. And yet, you maintain this positivity. How do you do that?
I think that, there are so many people who have the attitude of like, I'm not going to take this lying down. Like I have two hands, and I'm going to make it happen. And there's already, in the past 50 years and 30 years and 10 years have been massive, massive improvements in the world, with things like poverty rates decreasing, more people being educated, more justice, more wealth equality, more advancements in health. And it's because of all of those people who are working really hard. So while there are things that are, not great and definitely need to be changed, I get my energy and I feel empowered when I talk to people who are like, I see this as a problem, I'm going to make a difference. And I know that they're making a difference. Because they're working on problems in really smart and sustainable and collaborative ways. But I also know they're making a difference because of just the statistics of how much better the world has gotten over the past couple decades.
You just hit on collaboration. How much of a role does collaboration play, do you think, in the effectiveness of some of these nonprofits that you connect with?
Kathy, I'm really glad you asked me that because that is something I think about all the time. So in Franklin County, which is the county that Columbus is in Ohio, there are 9,000 nonprofits, which is too many.
Yeah.
People say that you have too much of a good thing. That's too many. And I talked to a woman on my podcast a couple of months ago who wrote a blog called "If You're Thinking About Starting a Nonprofit, Don't." And here's why.
Yes.
And nonprofits are great and they really serve a purpose. And I'm grateful that I can dedicate my life to serving nonprofits. But there is a serious lack of working together, not only in the nonprofit world, but in the social good world, and in the world in general. And I think it's hard for people to work together, especially in the nonprofit space, because the type of person who starts a nonprofit is insanely passionate and they are insanely, cause focused.
And it's their baby.
And I was just going to say that, and it's their baby. And it's really hard to share your baby with someone else.
Yeah.
And I get it. That's hard. Collaboration is hard. And sometimes if something good happens with sees the good, like I want to take credit for it. Like it's mine. It's my baby. But my goal isn't to lift up myself. My goal is to support the people that I'm interviewing. So I totally understand. And I get it. And it's not an easy thing, but that's definitely a problem that I see and I think needs worked on.
So speak to us about the number of boards that you sit on or the nonprofits that you're involved in outside of your paid work.
Yeah, so two major ones take a lot of my focus. And again, that's just because I care a lot and I love my community and I love getting involved in my community. I think a quote that kind of sums up my personality is my boss's friend works for the Children's Hospital, and he designed a poster for an event that I was hosting, and he texted my boss and was like, "Doesn't she have enough to do already?" And Madison was like, "I think making this event and serving on this committee is like what she does for fun."
I kind of get that sense.
And it is like I really do. It's my favorite. I spend most evenings either working or like attending a community event or working on attending a community meeting. So the Children's Hospital in Columbus, Nationwide Children's Hospital, has a group called the Young Professionals Council, and I was kind of one of the founding members. About a year and a half ago, we had a focus group. The Hospital Foundation held a focus group and said, how can we get more young people involved? And then the group formally started in April. And I'm on the executive committee. So it's our goal to obviously fundraise for the hospital and then make more young professionals good stewards of the hospital and ambassadors of the hospital, and just kind of talking about all of the amazing things that the hospital is doing. So I love that. I love my co-committee members. I love serving the hospital. It's great. The other organization that takes a lot of my time is called Celebrating One. And I interviewed the founder, Yurgita, for one of my podcasts. And Celebrating One is amazing. So the full name is Celebrating One Person at a Time. And we host celebrations for people who accomplish major milestones in their life. So like a big program that we have is if a single parent has a graduating high school student and they can't afford a party, they can come to Celebrating One and we will pay to throw the party for them. And then we also do celebrations with senior citizens, and we have free support groups. And then we also have a really cool program that's been getting a lot of news and attention lately,
Card writing.
called Send. Yes, and I love the card writing. The card writing is a perfect thing that a nonprofit, a perfect program for a nonprofit. So essentially, if someone wants a note of encouragement in the mail, they can sign up on our website, celebratingone.org, and then they get a card in the mail every month. And the cool thing is we have tons of volunteers. There's a group at a high school that started a card writing club. Local businesses can have like, hey, come in during our lunch and we're all going to write cards. And then they get sent out in the mail. And that's amazing. And I serve on the board for that as well.
Well, and so that's really neat. Like, the Celebrating One is really important. I run a membership site for leaders in nonprofits. And one of the things I make sure I do is mail handwritten cards. And I love going to the dollar store getting stickers. And so they get these cards in the mail that are like jam-packed of stickers. And and sometimes I'll put a quote in them or a poem in them or something. And the amount of comments that come back that are like, that really made my day. That's sticking on my wall. Like, that stands out to people. And I have to tell you, when my oldest daughter moved out of home, she was 17 and, had a bit of a rough go. And she was living in the next community about 20 minutes away. For probably a year, I mailed her a card every single week. I mean, I seen her, but I mailed her a card every week. And, I know that she still has that box of cards. It means something to have somebody stop and write that. It's an incredible difference.
It really does. And I kind of mentioned that we have a group of high schoolers that started a card writing club, and they are so creative. They use markers and stamps and just make it really colorful. And we get a lot of comments too about like, oh, this came at exactly the right time, or I was having a really bad day and I opened this, and it's great. I love it.
So where did the award come in that you got?
Yeah. So in December, I won an award from the Columbus Young Professionals Club for being the volunteer of the year. Super humbled by and super grateful for. But I just feel grateful that, I can recognize and support the nonprofits in Central Ohio that are doing great work. And I volunteer a lot on the skills-based volunteering side with the Children's Hospital and Celebrating One. And I've served on several other event committees that are in sections of the year, like the Festival for Good and American Cancer Society and things like that. So I do a lot of skills-based volunteering. And then I also, through Point, do like random volunteering. Like Thursday night, don't have anything to do, I'm going to go help serve the community meal at the food kitchen. Or Saturday morning, I'm going to go help build a house with Habitat for Humanity. Or clean some cat cages. Or,
because you have nothing better
whatever.
To do.
Something like that.
But it fills
I'm very extroverted.
Yeah, but it fills your heart.
It does.
And there's been studies done about how when we volunteer, it actually makes us feel better. And I think, as you're talking, and I'm speaking to some of the leaders who are listening to this, often what I hear is, I don't have time. I mean, I don't have time to clean my house. I don't have time to take care of myself. I don't have time to do anything. I'm so drained at the end of my day. And yet, when we step into volunteering and we are compassionate and we give, it actually scientifically has been proven to boost our energy and to make us feel better. And so there's been a number of articles written about the value of volunteering, and you're definitely displaying that.
Yeah, someone I talked to a couple weeks ago asked me if volunteering was life-giving for me. And I was like, oh, I've never heard that phrase before, but you know what it is. Everything very community-based, whether it's like a long-term commitment like being on a board or a one-time commitment like serving a meal is very life-giving. And I'm going to start using that word. Very energizing, very life-giving. It fills me up.
Yeah, yeah. So talk to us about what it's like to sit on a board. I mean, you sit in which kind of roles on the board? Are you an executive director in one of them?
No. So I don't know how it is in Canada, but in like the States, the board is legally responsible for the nonprofit. And so the nonprofit is owned by the nonprofit.
Right.
So the board does things like compliance and fundraising and obeys all the legal things. So there's somewhat boring things like that. So the executive director is typically like staff on the
Okay. Yeah. Same here.
volunteer.
Yep.
And okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah, and so the board, so with Celebrating One, we all have like our assigned responsibilities, like documentation and communication and board recruitment. And then also our executive director is really great. She is like, you know what, like have your assigned roles, like something that you're good at and something that's maybe not as fun, but is needed and it's going to push the organization forward. And then choose a side project that might be something that you want to try. Like, oh, I've never done marketing before, but I'm really interested in trying some design work.
Right.
And I think that's a really great model because then we all have our assigned roles of that's pushing the organization forward. And then we also get to kind of use our skills in a fun way, but also kind of test them out, like I've done a lot of writing for Celebrating One, which has been really fun. And it's great. It's great to kind of have my vision be a part of where this awesome organization is going. And sometimes there are really hard things, like when we have to deal with budget and we need to, make sure we're fundraising enough to hit our
targets,
our 2020 budget and our 2021 budget. But overall, I think organizational structure plays a huge role in how you feel about your organization, besides for your coworkers.
Yeah.
And it's really great.
One of the things that you've mentioned a couple times is your strengths. So you're very aware of where your skills and your strengths lie. So you've done the Strengths Finder you've talked about. How much work do you do just personally, really getting clear on who you are and where your strengths are and how to do that best?
Yeah, I feel very strongly about strengths. So when I was in college, I took like a week-long leadership seminar on strengths, and which is where we did the Gallup Strengths Finder, which is just one of the many. And we talked about, so the entire list gives you your 32, like broken down from your most to your least, but they only showed us our top 5 because the theory was don't spend time working on your weaknesses, spend time working on your strengths. And that's kind of been instilled in me from my very early adult life. And then I've kept, making, making that more and more of a core of who I am, is strengths first. And so I feel like I know myself really well. And over the last couple of years, I'm just trying to know myself better. I lost my job at the end of 2018, which was really hard. It happens to a lot of people, but it's really, really hard. And so I spent a lot of time doing self-reflecting, and I bought these big poster boards and colorful markers, and I wrote out tons of
Girl after my own heart.
Yes. I love it. And I wrote what do you like about your job? What do you dislike about your job? What topics are you interested in? what are your strengths? What do you never want to do again? Like, and it was everything from like, I really like running meetings. I really like working on workforce development to I really hate having to clock in. And I did like this huge, yeah, I'm like a morning person, but I like to do mornings on my own time.
Right.
So when I had to like clock everywhere at 7:30, it was
not going to work.
Not great. Yeah, so all of that self-reflection is really great, but I have a lot to learn, but I feel like I do know myself really well. And that makes me, more successful and able to do more with my time because I know how to spend my time in the most effective way.
Yeah. So one of the things about that you said around, you hate clocking in. The challenge for a lot of older nonprofit leaders is they don't get millennials. They're like, I don't understand. They're hard to work, hard to deal with. Give some tips on how to work with millennials for some of the older generation who might be tuning in.
Okay, well, hi, Dad. I'm pretty sure he's listening right now. And I also just want to say that my dad is brilliant. He is a Gen X baby boomer. I don't know, but he has like a large team of engineers, and a lot of those engineers are millennials, and he complains about them all the time. He's like, "Oh, my millennials like don't get to work on time or like take long lunches, and millennials are lazy." So I definitely. There is that issue.
There's a little bit of pushback.
I can say a little bit of pushback. I can say 100% for a fact, I am not lazy. Yeah. I have my weaknesses, but laziness is not one of them. But I don't love being like, I don't like the, if you're here at like 7:42 instead of 7:30, that's bad.
Right.
And I don't like you have to have a half an hour lunch. And I don't like, okay, like, I'm done with what I need to do for the day, but I have to stay until 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Like, that just seems utterly ridiculous to me. And I think a lot of people my age feel the same way. I operate off the, results-based work. Yeah. So if I can get 8 hours worth of work done in 7 hours, then like I should go home.
Right.
Or if there are days where, I have a big event coming up and I need to maybe work 9 or 10 and I need to stay late to get it done, then I should do that too. And I think that's something that a lot of the older generations don't agree with. And I think that's a major difference. And kind of with that goes off the flexibility. I feel like a lot of millennials care a lot about flexibility. So like, if I need to stay late, then I will. But if my friend's in town and I want to take a longer lunch, then I'm going to. Yeah. But then also a lot of millennials like have their work email on their phone and they don't mind answering an email after hours. So that huge flexibility of time, I feel like is really important.
Well, and when you and I were talking before, we were talking about like people want work-life balance and they want this like work shuts off here and life begins here, which is sort of very much the way we used to try and live our lives. The quote was leave work at work. But like you say, work is everywhere now and it's on your phone and your world is work. I mean, I don't know about you, but work messages me on the Facebook Messenger. So it's not like you get rid of work at 4:30. And so there's less of a balance, and I think you used the word flow.
Yes. Yeah. I totally agree. That's something that I'm fine with. And I feel like a lot of my peers are fine with too. If there's a night where I'm really fed up and I just can't deal with work anymore, I turn off my notifications for my email. And then I just don't deal with it. But most nights, if someone instant messages me or I have an email, like I don't mind responding. Yeah. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with, when you're decreasing the strict lines between work and life, that means that work bleeds over a little bit
Yep.
into life, but then life can bleed a little bit into
Yeah.
work, especially with families, working moms. If a mom has a sick child, or if a dad has a sick child, they can stay at home and work from home. Or, even that's an emergency, but even if your child has a play at school, or
Dentist appointment or eye
you're
appointment or
yeah, or even like, your mom's coming into town and you
Yeah.
want to take the afternoon and spend time
Yeah.
with her, then I think that's important
Well,
too. And I feel like that's the lines blur both ways.
yeah, and I think, one of the things that we do is we judge people when they say, I don't want to come in till 9 or 9:30. And we see that, like you say, from that old perspective of you have to punch the clock, and that's a good work ethic. But we don't flip the switch and go to the other side where we say, yeah, but I want to take the afternoon off to go to my son's school play. And the other thing, I'm getting older, and there's days that, like 2 o'clock hits and I'm like done because I didn't sleep good at night, and I'll go have a nap.
Yeah.
And so what I tell people is you can nap at the office. I know a lady who has a little bed in the storage closet. I know people who will nap in their car. I know people who will just put their head down at their
Amazing.
desk. I used to have a staff that she would come in and she'd be like, I'm going to the boardroom, and she'd lay down on the floor in the boardroom and have a nap.
I love this woman.
Yeah. And so we have to start seeing things differently. We're not capable of shutting the world off at different times. What we have to do is find the balance. And so I think sometimes, especially in leadership roles, we'll give and give and give and give and give. And I watch this all the time. It's fine to work a weekend. I would think, when you're going through contract negotiations, or you're writing a big proposal, or there's a big funding event, you are going to have to put in extra time. But you then also need to recuperate and refresh and recharge. And that's the piece that I think we miss.
Absolutely. I say all the time is you can't pour from an empty cup.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right. What's that?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, what have we not touched on that you want to touch on?
So I feel like kind of, this whole work-life balance thing is very 2020 and kind of aligns with the other things that have been growing more trendy in the workplace. So things like the gig economy. If you want to drive for Uber, or you want to be a consultant, or you want to, make your own hours, do freelancing, all of these things incorporates that flexibility. And then also on the don't pour from an empty cup thing, we are placing a stronger emphasis on mental health, which is great, amazing. Yes. I'm so passionate about it. Everyone should go to therapy. And I think that comes into play with this as well, that it's not weak to take care of yourself, it's smart to take care of yourself. And I think all of these things factor in together that kind of add to everything we've just been talking about for the past 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, and just on that note, again, I think there's a mentality that if I show my weakness at work, like I'm tired, I'm feeling depressed, I need to go to therapy. There's this mentality that we have to be this perfect persona, and it gets us into trouble again and again and again. And so I think the more we can be not wishy-washy weak, but like vulnerable in a strong kind of way.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've been thinking so much about. And for example, the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I was traveling all across Ohio, and I was really tired. And I had early mornings and late nights and just lots of meetings. And I turned to my boss and I said, I'm upset about X, Y, and Z, and I need you to be a leader for me right now, and I need you to tell me that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, or stuff like, I think everyone has an aspect of customer support in their job, which isn't always fun.
Yep.
And saying, if you're having a problem, saying, I understand that things that aren't fun and that are uncomfortable are a part of my job and just have to happen. But this process is really hard for me. So if there's a way that we can work
Right.
together
Yes.
and make it better, then I'd like to talk about it. And those are like literal words that I said to my boss. And as I said them, I'm like, who are you? Like, what has therapy done to you?
But I bet it worked.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Because
just
you're
being
honest.
really honest. Yeah.
Yeah. So, have you had any challenges as a leader on one of the boards that you've struggled with? Not that you need to get into details,
Yeah.
but what are some strategies you might have there?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this, when we talked before. So I know that my skills, and I have a lot of really great skills and strengths that make me great as a leader. So I'm obviously very positive. I'm great at teaching. I'm great at encouraging, finding, what makes someone tick and saying like, okay, if you really like to do this, then let's do this.
Yeah.
And then I'm great at, the planning and the delegating and things like that. However, I'm not super great when things get hard. So if conflict and stuff like that. So I'm definitely learning and getting better. But I think something that I have to learn, and this might be something that someone else has to unlearn, is that sometimes when I'm a leader, if I'm a board chair, or a committee chair or a supervisor, sometimes I have to say, like, I hear what you're saying, but I have authority over this. And this is my decision because of this.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm not super great at. I'm trying to learn how to be better at it. And I think that kind of falls in with, desire to be liked.
Yeah.
But again, I'm telling myself leadership is not about my ego. It's about moving the organization forward.
One of the things, well, there's two key character traits that we want in our leaders. One is integrity. We want to trust our leaders, and we know that we trust them to walk their talk. But one of the other things that we want in our leaders is decisiveness. And not
Yes.
that decisiveness, sometimes, we try and we talked about collaboration and we try and get this consensus decision. That's not always possible. You're a leader for a reason, and sometimes that means you make decisions that not everyone agrees with. And it's a skill
Exactly.
to learn.
It is, and I'm definitely, that's something that I'm really working on. Is leadership is not about being liked. Leadership is not about my personal legacy. Leadership is about what can I put in place that will make my work continue after I'm gone.
And yet, as women, many of us are want to be pleasers. We want to, fit in. We're perfectionists. And so, we spend all of our time trying to make everybody happy and make everything work. And yet, that's not what organizations need sometimes. They need us to say the hard things, move the organization forward in a way that we're still in integrity. And so, it's a learning curve.
It is. How have you, in your own life, how have you kind of overcome that and placed that into your own leadership toolkit?
Yeah. One of the things that, like you said, I had to learn that it wasn't about everybody liking me. And that was one of the really hard ones because I want people to like me. Even now as I, you run your podcast or I do these interviews or, I coach people and I'm like, okay, I just want people to like me. And, I'll get this, email back about somebody that's gone, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I like fall apart and I'm like, no, you're supposed to like me. And so it's overcoming that. And one of the ways that I've really worked to overcome that is part of what you've been talking about today is really seeing that vision of the bigger purpose. Why are we here? We're here to make a difference. And there are going to be people who align with those values and those that don't. And so I've really had to look individually and then organizationally about the values. What are the values of the organization? So one of the organizations that I'm heavily involved with in terms of volunteering is the Toastmasters organization. And it really is about, people often think it's about learning to do speeches. It's not so much. It's a lot about confidence and a lot about leadership. And those are two values that I strongly hold. And, there are times that I can be at a Toastmasters meeting or event and someone just annoys the snot out of me, like really bad. And it's been a wonderful breeding ground for me to learn to go, okay, they're different. Where are our values aligned? And where aren't they? We're both very much focused on personal development and growth. I get that, right? So we don't have to like the same things and we don't have to like each other. But if we can align our values as we go forward, it really helps move the organization forward. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. And this is why you are a leadership coach, a leadership and development coach. You're the expert.
Well, and I was talking to a client yesterday and we were working through her values because that's one of the very first things I do with people is really get clear on their values. And, my top value is excellence. And I know that when I lean too far, it becomes perfectionism. And when I go the other direction and I'm sloppy, I don't feel good. I feel like I'm not doing something right. If I'm not prepared, if I'm not, I did a webinar yesterday and I'm like, am I giving this my best? It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to know that I'm giving excellence. So that's my top value. One of her top values was around quality service. And what she realized was she's not really techie, but she had a lady who resisted technology and wanted to do everything handwritten. And so it kept rubbing up against that value of quality work. We're not providing quality work when you're not inputting the data onto the computer. It has nothing to do with technology, but it can become a technology battle. But when you bring it back to your values, I value providing this level of work to our clientele. Do you value that too? Yeah. Then how can we, move forward with those values? So yeah, really ensuring that you understand. I do a lot of work making people not just identify a word for a value, but understanding what that means. If you say you value family and I value family, that's two completely different things. And the way I value family now that I have 5 grandchildren versus when I was raising 4 children, very different how it shows up. And so you have to do that ongoing work to understand your values, understand what they mean. And 90% of the challenges that we face in life is when our values are being pushed up against, they're stepped on, we're not in alignment with our values. And then that's, like I say earlier, the number one thing we're looking for from our leaders is integrity. When you're not aligned with your values, you're out of integrity. And everybody else can see it, even if you can't. And I'll get off my soapbox.
Yes, now. Absolutely. I love your soapbox. It's amazing. I 100% agree. I think Warren Buffett just put out an article saying that he is the number one thing he looks for in new hires is integrity. And I, just kind of goes off what you said. Yeah, Warren Buffett says only one trait actually points to a great leader. Yeah. And that's the number one thing.
Well, and so the part of the backstory for me, when I realized that integrity was so important, was when I got a performance appraisal and my staff said I was not in integrity. Not once, Stephanie, but 2 years in a row. And my team was a mess.
Wow.
Things turned nasty to the point of people had filed a grievance against me. It was awful. And, wow. And when I got the feedback that I wasn't in integrity, I didn't really know what integrity meant. And so that kind of catapulted me on this last 10 years into what is integrity? How can I be more in integrity? And, that's how you move forward.
I 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, it's crazy. And here's one of the things that leaders do. We talked a minute ago about work-life balance. This is where many leaders will be out of integrity. we preach work-life balance in our organization. It's so important. We have all of these policies about it. And if you need a mental health day, take a mental health day. But when was the last time you seen that leader balancing her or his life? You're not in alignment.
Exactly. Yes, 100% lead by example.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where that's at. Any last tips you want to share with my audience, Stephanie?
Yes. If I had any last tip, I think kind of sums up, my values and my goals as a person, and then kind of talks about like everything else that we talked about is find out who else is doing what you want to do or what you care about, and then work with them. You don't have to merge your organizations, but if you want to share resources or host an event together, 100% do it. I could definitely see a need for that in the nonprofit world. And then that's also why I started Seize the Good, is because, Kathy, you mentioned the Kenya episode where this guy like crowdsources tractors for farmers that can afford them. Yeah. And so I love to kind of say like, okay, this is a problem. These are the people who are working on it. Go support them or go have a conversation with them if your organization is doing the same thing. I think that's so important. And just really needs to be said and really needs to be put into practice.
Absolutely. All right. Tell everybody where they can find you and Seize the Good.
Yeah, so you can find Seize the Good on all your favorite podcast hosts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can also go to seizethegood.org, at Seize the Good Podcast on Instagram, at Seize the Good on Twitter. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's Stephanie@seizethegood.org. And I'd love to chat with you.
And the Point app, if people are like, what the heck? There's a volunteering app? Where do they find that?
Pointapp.org. Like point as in I want to do something good, but I need a starting point.
Right. POINT.org? Yes.
Pointapp.org.
Oh, pointapp.org. Okay, perfect. And all those links are in the notes as well, guys. So if you missed any of those, we've made sure that they are in the notes. Thank you, Stephanie, very much. For those of you who have enjoyed this, you might also enjoy the training library. Way too many women leaders are struggling and wish that they had access to a coach or a mentor and online training, but don't believe that they or their organization can afford it. That's not necessarily true. I run a subscription site and it's called the Training Library. And inside the Training Library, you will find ongoing personal and professional development training and have access to an executive coach, that's me, at your fingertips. And so when you hit those inevitable challenges that you will as a leader, you know where to go for support, training, and the coaching that you need. And you'll find that at kathyarcher.com/library. Thank you again, Stephanie, for being here today. I so appreciate your energy, your ideas, your wisdom, and tons of inspiration for those following today. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks for being awesome, Kathy.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.